story, as always, is brought to you by Telecel, connecting energies, holy insecticide spray and coil. Enjoy a holy sleep. There is fresh resistance tonight to the removal of the former Inspector General of Police, Dr. George Akufo-Addo, as IMANI Africa labels the swearing in of a new head of the police service as an affront to democracy. The president yesterday announced through Government Communications Minister Felix Kwakye-Ofosu that COP Christian Teteyonu will be the replacement for Dr. Dampare, but remained silent on his next step. Less than 24 hours, IMANI Africa has filed a fresh injunction at the court seeking a number of reliefs. We'll get into that shortly, but first let's touch base with our presidential correspondent Maxwell Agwegba, who has been covering the swearing in of the newly appointed IGP. He joins us live on the lines right now. Maxwell, you were at the Jubilee House. What was the mood like before and after the swearing-in?
It was one that you can describe as celebratory at the Jubilee House. From the junior officers I saw to the senior police officers of the Police Management Board, POMA, who were present, there was clear excitement about COP Teteyonu's new role. Now, some of those I interacted with praised his stellar performance in key leadership positions, including 6 Director General roles, overseeing some positions such as administration, special duties, motor traffic and transport intelligence. They believe that with the experience he has gathered over the years, he will bring valuable leadership as he takes over as the new IGP. Now, I also spoke with former Yoko boss, COP Mame Tiwa-Addo, who expressed optimism about COP Teteyonu's appointment. Additionally, I interacted with former Accra Regional PR of the Ghana Police Service, who is no longer with the police service, Ifya Tenge. She was particularly excited about the news. Now, having covered swearing-in ceremonies at the presidency since January 2025, this was the first time I witnessed a group carrying small drums, singing and dancing after the ceremony. Now, quite a number of policemen in plain clothes were also present. Many of those I spoke to outside after the ceremony expressed excitement about the appointment, believing that COP Teteyonu has dedicated his entire life to the police service and truly deserves this role.
Okay, he has also been speaking today. What will be his priorities?
Well, key amongst the things he talked about, he said that in alignment with the transformation and modernization of the Ghana Police Service, he promised to uphold the values, traditions, and culture of the Ghana Police Service, consistent with the resetting agenda of President Mahama.
This leadership position transcends mere title. It embodies a solemn responsibility that demands unwavering vigilance, integrity, and the ability to make decisions that safeguard the safety, security, the well-being of our citizens and beyond. Excellency, I approach this responsibility with the utmost seriousness, fully recognizing the weight of expectations accompanying this role. In alignment with the transformation and modernization of the service, I pledge to uphold the values, traditions, and culture of the Ghana Police Service, consistent with the resetting agenda of Your Excellency, the President. In this regard, the guiding principles will include discipline and respect for seniority within the hierarchy structure of the service. So I assure you, Your Excellency, that professionalism, transparency, accountability, and fairness shall underpin my administration.
Well, the outgoing Inspector General of Police, Dr. George Akufo-Addo, he issued a statement, and my colleague James Aveji joins me in the studio with details. James, what really has he been saying?
So this statement has been signed by his personal assistant, not actually he himself, his personal assistant. He's been thanking the Ghanaian populace for the number of support he's received so far, 24 hours into his removal from office. He said he's overwhelmed by this, thanking God as well. He wishes to also express his appreciation to the various religious and traditional leaders for their prayers, wisdom, and good counsel at all times. Their insight, according to through his PA, has been indispensable. He also thanks the heads of sister security agencies for the cooperation and steadfast support they gave him over the period, which some of them have also been replaced as we speak. Went on to thank the CSOs and every other organization that's been part of his journey over the period. He's 35 years from the rank of a general constable all the way to an inspector general of police, the police management board, and all of that. The last one says he wishes to express his continuous commitment to Ghana, our beloved country, and his willingness to serve the nation that he loves. He has served the Ghana Police Service for 35 years of nearly 55 years of his life with an unblemished record, and he remains energetic, committed, and enthusiastic about serving his nation with discipline, honor, and integrity. And this was signed by Nana Osei-Afrifa, who is executive assistant to the IGP.
James, Franklin Kujo, president of IMANI Africa, he also posted details of that fresh injunction they filed at the court. Tell us the details.
Well, according to him, he would like to place on record that this morning's injunction, which I've been making with since last night, filed by quote, our lawyers, was in furtherance of a suit filed by IMANI and Professor Kwesi Enin last year, March 2024, at the Supreme Court 9 months before the December elections. It is not a fresh case, and the injunction request was based on many published rumors about Dampare's removal. It is not about any attempt to derail John Mahama at all. He goes on to quote varied provisions in the Constitution, articles to back this, making the point that the removal from office heads of the agencies, and there shouldn't be any removal unless only upon proven stated misconduct of misbehavior established against these officers, which he says the president in that dismissal letter did not state the reason why he was dismissing George Akufo-Addo, and also states that firing or removal of similar heads of security institutions like the fire service, the commissioner general of the Ghana Immigration Service, as well as the Director General of the Prison Service, which three we are learning in the last 24 hours have also been replaced, the leaders of the prisons, the fire service, as well as the Immigration Service. And so they are waiting for the final decision of the court next 2 months, which is May 7th, 2025, to see what the court will say on that.
Thank you, James Aveji, for that update. Now, let's go on the phone lines now. Thankfully, I have with me the Vice President of IMANI Africa, Kofi Bento. I also have with me Professor Emmanuel Kwesinin. He is a security analyst and also one of the plaintiffs. I'll start with Kofi Bento, really. Let's go on the phone lines now and speak to Vice President of IMANI Africa, Kofi Bento. I also have joining me Professor Emmanuel Kwesinin. He is a security analyst and also one of the plaintiffs. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time here on Top Story. I'll start with you, Kofi, really. Does the President's appointment of a new IGP, while the injunction is pending, constitute a contempt of court?
Oh, thank you, and good evening to everybody. Good evening, Prof. Enin.
Yes, good evening.
Now, every lawyer at least should know or knows that when a case is before a court, it is contemptuous of the court for anybody to take an action that overreaches the court or seeks to make the court's ruling odious or nugatory. What it means is simply that you don't do anything to make nonsense of a court ruling where it is imminent. Now, the action, therefore, of the executive is contemptuous of the highest court of this land, because for about a year now, a case has been filed before they came into office. And the case is not about one person or another person. It is about the stability of the security services in this country, which we believe has been abused for many years. And the case has been heard. Arguments have been made. Cases have been closed. And the court, the highest court of this land, has given a date for ruling. When you have a situation like that, there is no law-abiding person and no one who respects the rule of law who will overreach the court by doing exactly what the court is going to rule over.
So the president is in contempt of the court. If the court rules really in favor of you, the plaintiffs, in May 2025, which is the time the court will be hearing that case, will the newly appointed IGP and other security heads be automatically removed, or will the ruling affect future appointments, really?
You don't have time for me to explain that, so let me put it this way. That confusion which will erupt is exactly the reason why no law-abiding person, when a case is before a court and the court is about to make a ruling, should go and try to overreach the court. Indeed, there is a school of thought that believes that under the circumstance, there is already an injunction in place, which is why we filed to confirm that injunction, so that if there is any doubt, nobody will, act based on that. Now, being that as it may, that they have done what they've done, if the court rules that indeed the president should not remove any IGP or security head or whatever without just cause, what happens? We end up in a very, very terrible stalemate. Okay, so that is why, look, let me make this clear. Because of the way you asked the question, I couldn't make it clear in the beginning, but let me make it clear. We do not speak for IGP Dampare. Myself and Prof. Enin here, we have been at this thing for years before IGP Dampare. We don't speak for him. And we have no problem with anybody doing their job. We have no problem with IGP Yowunu. I knew IGP Yowunu many years before I even knew IGP Dampare. So it is not about the personalities. It is about the security services. Now, this will create confusion if that ruling comes out to hold our viewpoint that upon the reading of all the laws that are applicable, a president can appoint but may not remove a ranked officer without just cause. It is written in black and white. The fact that it has been done all this time and we have been complaining all this time does not mean it is right. And please, when this is how you build a nation, when something is in contest or we are not sure about it, take it to the Supreme Court. I am quite sure about our position. But we have taken it to the Supreme Court and said, look, you are the lords of the land when it comes to law. Interpret this for the stability of this state. And note that the state is different from government. Security of the state is more important than security of a government. And the two are very different things. You're talking about the security of the state and the state security system. So indeed, it is very sad that this has happened. And I hope that when the ruling comes down, and it is in our favor, the corrections will be done.
Let me bring in Professor Emmanuel Kwesi at this time. Just stay with me, Kofi Bento. I just want to explore with you, Prof, what the impact this would have on the police service, really, especially when we have uncertainty surrounding the IGP's position.
Well, let me reiterate one thing that Kofi just said. That the suit that was filed a year ago seeks to improve security governance and management in this country, in which ranked officers or senior officers' loyalty to the state has been tested and to every single government has been proven when they are appointed into influential positions that except in cases where there is just cause, and if they are not above 60, then really there's no cause to remove them. People will talk about issues of loyalty. I need to be comfortable that, you are at peace with my vision and mission. All those things are okay. But then when we use that argument, then we are saying we don't trust some of the officers because security is such a special, narrow field of professional performance, that we need to flout their law. So all that we are seeking for is a transparent approach and a certainty when one gets its job, that I can continue to deliver. But also that when the time comes for them to be removed, to be done in a decorous manner. And I've always said this since 2000. So what will be the impact on the police service? I think we are already beginning to see it, in which spraying of money, I think the video that has gone viral, I don't know if it's true, but were it to be so, then it raises fundamental questions about morality, discipline, and professionalism.
At the heart of this appointment are concerns about the neutrality, really, of the police service. How does frequent political interference in security leadership affect the neutrality of security institutions?
Well, I think historically politicians have politicized almost every facet of our public space. The security institutions are only just one of them. Okay? But because they carry lethal weapons and they protect the state at the peril of their lives, IMANI, Kofi and I thought, look, let's get some clarity around this. Okay, so that people know that I am in this position for the fifth time, and because my loyalty to the state of Ghana has been tested over time, I've put my life on the line for Ghana, that I can be trusted also to deliver irrespective of who I'm supposed to salute. And we've undermined this loyalty and professionalism and institutional ethos and independence for a very long time. Okay, so much so that there's a certain uncertainty as to who goes home, when, where, how. And that is what we seek to get clarity and interpretation over. So we are waiting for the Supreme Court, to give its interpretation.
Okay.
This is a long-term intervention on our part because as citizens who have studied this area and know this area, we are concerned that the wholesale changes, irrespective of whether the people have fallen foul of the law or their professional and ethical standards.
Now, if the Supreme Court rules in your favor, I'm wondering what changes should we consider as a country in structuring security appointments to prevent executive overreach, really?
Well, I think we have a fairly good chance with the constitutional review process. Were the Supreme Court to rule in our favor, the constitutional review process may not have ended by that time, or even if it's ended, it gives us an opportunity to look at the specific articles that we have cited from the Constitution from 200 onwards, and to say how do we clarify and make them more specific. Because if you read it very closely, and I think Kofi can speak better to this, there are certain areas where gray areas, and I think that is where we want the interpretation from the Supreme Court. Then the operational aspects of translating it into rules and regulations and what structures we need to put in place to ensure, that loyal officers can continue to serve irrespective of who appointed them will then be hopefully a thing of the past. But issue of tenure, bounded time periods and all that can be brought into the conversation.
Thank you so much for your time here on Top Story. Let me wrap up with Kofi Bento, really. As we speak, is the president in contempt of court?
Technically, the president cannot be in contempt of court per se. Contempt is what is personal. And again, we don't have time to explain that. But the president's action is contemptuous of the court. It is an affront to the court. All right. And again, we just don't have the time to explain that. So for the sake of, this discussion, let me just give you an example of the confusion that has been created. The IGP is a rank in the police service. It is a rank above COP. In the letter that was signed, the IGP George Dampare was referred to as a COP. Is that a demotion? That has legal implications because in Ghana you can't demote anybody. Now, it says replaces COP Dampare. Is that forced retirement or dismissal? What is it? Is that a reassignment or what? That has legal implications. There's a lot of confusion there. Does it remain in the force or not?
Well, the president's letter doesn't say he has been dismissed.
That's the point I am making. The point I am making is that you are dealing with a very serious office, a very high office, a very sensitive office. And then you have a situation where you allow your spokesperson to write a letter which is very, very vague, demoting the IGP to a COP, not clarifying whether he has been retired or he has been reassigned or not. And I'm saying this is why you don't overreach the court. Like Prof. Eni said, these are regimented institutions. Let the system be clear. Okay, let us do things in an orderly fashion. Why couldn't we just wait till May 7th and let the Supreme Court make a determination and then we sort things out? Nobody owns that IGP seat. All right? And you've seen from IGP Dampare's letter that he is not contesting it. So what we all should do is to observe the rule of law, okay? And when things have gone before the lords of law, let them make a determination and we can all proceed in an orderly fashion.
Thank you so much. Kofi Bento is Vice President of IMANI Africa. Earlier I had Professor Emmanuel Kwesinin, a security analyst, also one of the plaintiffs. Thankfully, I have joining me right now the Director of Programs and Policy Engagement at the Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante. Thank you so much for your time. I recall as far back as the year 2020, you went to court, yourself and other 8 civil society groups. You were contesting the removal of the then Attorney General, Yao Dumelevo. Now, the Supreme Court ruled that President Akufo-Addo's directive for Daniel Dumelevo to take forced leave was unconstitutional. Now, given the similarities between Dumelevo's case and the current suit seeking to restrain the president from removing the IGP, what constitutional breaches do you foresee?
Well, good evening. Good evening to your listeners. So, I think, for me, the parallels that can be drawn is more about, how do you address what we consider to be either a lack of clarity or uncertainties, or even a particular officer within the public service asserting certain powers that maybe the Constitution does not grant the person. So in Dumelevo's case, the president was asserting powers that he had administrative control over independent governance institutions, the leaders of independent governance institutions. So he can tell them when to go on leave, he can tell them, very certain conditions and so on, which in our estimation, the Constitution didn't grant that power. There were, different procedures for dealing with independent governance institutions. And we were, the Supreme Court affirmed our position in that particular case. And so even in that case, it was never about Mr. Dumelevo. Of course, he was the person in the hot seat. He was the person that the breaches, had been done against. And we wanted to make sure that was rectified. But it was to make sure that in the future, if a president found themselves in that position, they will be minded that they didn't have that power. And I think in the Dampare case, it's the same similarity, that we have complained over the years that, we need to find a way of bringing some stability to an institution that really, I mean, somebody talked about the regimentation of that particular institution. It's a command and control, process, and you really have to have some stability. Otherwise, the kinds of objectives that is set up to deliver would always be undermined. If every 2 years, every 1 year, you are changing IGP, you are. There's no way you can build anything. The person comes there, they are looking behind their shoulders all the time because everybody wants to get to IGP and retire on their benefits. That kind of, and then it's the politics that is driving, who is selected, who is not selected. We cannot have that. And I think that we have to find a way as a public policy issue to address it. Now, whether you address it through constitutional design, whether you address it through interpretation of the law, these are all options that, we are looking at. But for me, that really is the critical role, because the point that I think it was Akufo-Addo was making, for example, is that now that the IGP, because it's as it says, a rank, has been removed and he's not reached retirement age, is the IGP going to serve under the current IGP? Because in terms of rank, they are the same. So what does that mean? There's a lot of confusion there. So the major point is that how do you create a more sort of structured system that is more stable, that allows people to actually do something when they are there 3-4 years, unless they are stated, misbehavior or some other kind of problem.
Okay.
But allow for some stability within the security services.
Thank you so much. Let me bring in right now MP for Wa West, Peter Tobu is an NDC MP. And it will interest you to know that prior to the appointment of COP Onu as the IGP, he was appointed the Deputy IGP. And then the Chairman of Parliament's Defence and Interior Committee, James Agaga, he was against this. I'm just wondering what really has changed. Why has your stance changed as the NDC?
Thank you very much, my dear sister, and good evening to your cherished listeners. Good evening to my co-panelists on the other side. The police is a regimented institution with unity of command. The unitary command requires that power flows from GP1, who is the Inspector General of Police, to the grassroots level. Mr. Christian Tete Yohunu was appointed by President Akufo-Addo as Deputy Inspector General of Police in charge of operations outside the law, outside CS 76. That requires that we have an IGP and a Deputy Inspector General of Police simpliciter. The fact that they attached an assignment that he was Deputy Inspector General of Police in charge of operations was a non-starter. And irrespective of who you are as a Deputy Inspector General of Police, you are answerable to the IGP. You take instructions from the IGP. You cannot operate on your own because unitary command. Today, we are talking about the appointment of Mr. Christian Tete Yohunu as the Substantive Inspector General of Police. He deserves 40 years in policing. It's not a problem. And the fact that Dr. George Akufo-Addo has done his part, people can assess him. Whatever it is, his time is up, and the president thinks that I need fresh blood injected into the policing system to help me reset the country. And he's done exactly that. You see, Dr. George Akufo-Addo happens to be the longest serving IGP after change of power. It has never happened in the Fourth Republic. In 2001, President Akufo changed the IGP in January. In 2009, President Mills changed the IGP in January. In 2017, President Akufo-Addo changed the IGP in January. In 2025, people were expecting the convention to follow. That the IGP was going to go in January.
The change is not in contention. The concern right now is about the change of stance. You were against the appointment of COP Onu as Deputy IGP. And then James Agaga was chairman of the Defence and Interior Committee, a committee you were a member of in the 8th Parliament. Why has your stance changed when it comes to his appointment and now you're singing his praises?
Yes. The appointment of Deputy IGP operations was actually an insult to the integrity and stature of Mr. Yohunu. There's no law at the time that says that the IGP should have a deputy in charge of operations. The law that is existing and still exists now is that the IGP should have a deputy IGP. There's a difference between deputy IGP and deputy IGP in charge of operations. It used to be there in history before 2012 when CR 76 became law, that the police used to have deputy IGP in charge of operations and deputy IGP in charge of administration. In 2012, Parliament passed the law, CR 76, and simplified the matter into one deputy IGP simpliciter. So I do not know where they got the powers from, because the president is a lawyer. How he appointed somebody as deputy IGP with one leg in charge of operations. He cannot operate without direct instructions from the IGP. And that is how come there was bad blood, because you cannot do anything if you are in charge of operations and you are not taking directives from the IGP. So that appointment itself was lame in its character. So we're against the appointment of deputy IGP in charge of operations, not against Yohonu being appointed. If he was appointed deputy IGP, all of us would have applauded him. But that was, in fact, a slight on his face. It was a show of disrespect. But if people do not know, we're fighting the fact that it should be full deputy IGP, not deputy IGP to one leg.
Thank you so much. Now, that's how we wrap up Top Story. Later on Joy News Prime, we'll be speaking to Dr. Kweku Anani-Ginde. He's a senior lecturer at Gimpa School of Law, and he will just be expanding the disparities in the 992 Constitution. We know that Article 202 gives the President the constitutional power to appoint the IGP, but 199 offers protection to civil servants, and we'll explore that further on Joy News Prime. My name is Faustina Safo.